Hey guys, I am Dani and welcome back here to Summer Skye Gardens. If you've watched one of my videos before, thank you so much. Thank you for coming back. If you are new here, I own and operate a flower farm in Splendora, Texas. It's right northeast of Houston and we're in zone 9B. And I will be going into my third year with this farm and this property. I've been growing flowers for years. I have a garden at home. And we bought this property and opened up this business in 2023. And I sold a small amount of things that year. Last year, 2024, was really like my big full first year. And so this year, starting again, it's now January, it's the new year, Happy New Year, and very excited for what's to come this year. Now, I had a few requests lately to do a video on what I plant for my warm, hot weather flowers and when I get all of those things started and planted. And I was sitting down to kind of write it out, and I decided to just go ahead and do like a full calendar year. I figured since it's January, why not just start with January and go through the whole year on what I plant, when I plant it, and a couple of other important tasks that are related to planting. And I can kind of show you what all I grow here. If there's some things that I don't grow that I might mention on, when you can plant it. And I hope this will help you out if you live in a hot climate like I do, because when we plant and grow things here can be very different from somebody that lives even in a temperate climate, but especially like a colder climate up north. So I'm South Texas. We have an extremely mild winter. In fact, we just got our first freeze night before last, and today is January 7th. So it took till January to get our first freeze. This happened last year. Our climate, unfortunately, is just getting warmer and warmer. And so, yeah, super mild winter, really long, hot months of the year that we call summer. We have like a super small spring, super small fall, couple of months of winter, and almost like 9 to 10 months of summer. So I'm going to take you through month by month and just kind of talk through when I grow everything and what I grow. If you are kind of like zone 9, 10, or even like a hotter zone 8, this should be pretty applicable to you. If you're in a cooler zone, let's say zone 8, 7, you can kind of like modify this to a degree to kind of fit your area. If you live in a colder climate, like I would say zone 5 or below, probably when I'm doing things is going to be fairly different from when you're doing things. So you may want to find a grower or a YouTuber that's more kind of in line on where you grow. Of course, this is what I do on my farm, and this may not be exactly perfect for you, but if you're newer and you're kind of lost on when to grow certain things, maybe this will help you out. One quick note as well on knowing your own climate is knowing your microclimate. So I have a video and I will link it below, and it shows you how to create a seasonal calendar for your specific local area. You can't just go on the USDA zone. Things are changing, and really when you say that you're in like zone 9, like me, it's really just saying what your average lowest temperature is. And even that is changing. And it doesn't say how often you get that low. It doesn't say how hot you get. It doesn't talk about precipitation throughout the year. So check that video out. It's super helpful to get, a full view throughout the year of the seasons and month by month, how the temperature changes, how the precipitation changes, because that's going to make a big difference on when you want to plant certain things. All right, let's get started. So we're in January. We're going to start with January. So typically by the beginning of January, I am planting my last tulips. If I can get them all in December, that's great. But you can certainly plant some in January. I would say probably by mid to late January is going to be your really kind of last Hail Mary. We have a very short window here for tulips because it warms up so quickly. You got to get them in the ground, and you've got to get pre-chilled bulbs. So that's either buying them from a supplier that's pre-chilled, or you've had them in your cooler or your refrigerator for weeks. And I will talk about that when we get to the later in the year months. This is also a good time to start planting some lily or gladiolus bulbs. Like I said, we have a mild winter, and these bulbs, they can grow in the warmth, but they do like a little bit of a cooler start as bulbs. So, January and February are really good months to plant lilies and gladiolus. This is also a good time in the winter, because we have a milder winter, to plant any kind of perennials or roses. Now, I don't grow roses at our flower farm, just because the more interesting rose varieties, I think, don't make the best cut flowers. I have a rose garden at my house that I love, and I will cut them and bring them into my home, but they only last a couple of days, and they're just not like where we are in the South. I don't feel that they're a very economical flower to grow. As well, there is a local flower farm here in Magnolia that just grows roses. So I don't want to compete with her. So I don't grow roses. But if you want to plant them at your farm, or you want to plant them in your garden, winter is a great time. Any kind of perennials that are going to need to grow across the summer, they really need to get established when it's cooler. Winter is not going to be a threat to them. It's our hotter months. So getting them in when it's cooler outside, they can get their roots established before the heat of summer sets in. That's really going to be your best choice for planting those. Now, typically by the end of January, I will also start taking mum cuttings. So I know this is not like planting anything, but this is a way to propagate your own supply of chrysanthemums, or if you're wanting to sell cuttings, I'll start taking those at the end of January, beginning of February, and growing those on at this time. All right, so February is a busy month, so we're continuing to take mum cuttings in February, planting more lilies and gladiolus. I'm starting sunflowers. I direct sow those outside because it's way easier to do that. I have started sunflowers inside when it was too hot outside to put them in the ground, but I don't like doing that, and sunflowers really do great just direct sowing them outside. If you are growing sunflowers for cut flower production, you really need to be planting them every week or every 2 weeks at the longest, because you want a continuous supply of sunflowers. So I like to pick like a space for the sunflowers and just kind of go row or bed by bed, and like just say, okay, this week I'm doing here, and then here, and then here, and then here. I put them in I have an earthway seeder, and I just go out there. It takes 5 or 10 minutes, and then we're good. And the biggest task of the month in February is to start the first round of warm season annuals. So these are flowers that need to be planted after the last frost. They like the warm, hotter months. And these are going to be like our biggest cash crop, really in the South in a hot climate, because we have such a short cool season window for cool season flowers. The warm stuff, the stuff that likes the heat, you're going to be able to grow for a longer period during the year. I succession plant these, do several rounds. So the seeds that I start for these, the first round I do in February, because about after 4 weeks, I will then transplant them outside. And these are going to be things like I grow zinnias, cosmos, amaranth, celosia, gomphrena, marigolds, basil, mint, and hibiscus. I pretty much start all of these inside just because I like starting seeds. I feel like it's pretty easy. And at this point in the year, it's still kind of chilly. So trying to direct sow these outside, they're not going to be happy because the soil is going to be still kind of cool. So if you start them inside and you give them 4 to 6 weeks growing inside, you harden them off and you move them out, by that point, it's going to be March, it's going to be getting warmer, and they're going to be a lot happier. Okay, so moving on to March. Really in March, you can do another round of warm season annuals. So by now you're transplanting your first round from February outside, and then you can go ahead and start your second round. A lot of these flowers, they love the heat, but I find that they do tend to peter out after a certain amount of time. And then especially as we get towards the real heat of summer, there's a lot of pest or disease pressure. So it's good if you have like fresh rounds of flowers growing. So as the first group is kind of starting to peter out, your second group is like really in full bloom coming along. And then like your next group is growing. So that way you're able to kind of have this continuous production of really excellent flowers instead of trying to spend all this time and energy and money on treating the original flowers that their production is dying. Maybe they have pest or disease issues and you're trying to battle that and keep them going. I don't like doing that. I think it's a waste of time. So just let them go or yank them out and put in another round. So first round is February, second round is March, and that's really all I'm doing in March. And then April is going to be a third round of warm season annuals. I also in April will be planting the mum cuttings that I started back at the end of January or beginning of February. Or if I've ordered new chrysanthemum cuttings from other suppliers, they should be getting shipped to me between like March and April. And then they're going outside. We plant chrysanthemums really early here just because they need to grow throughout the summer to bloom in the fall. And they need that length of time to really get established in our kind of climate. So the earlier you can plant your chrysanthemum cuttings, the better. Now, April is going to be my last round of starting warm season annuals inside. Just because by the time we're transplanting those, it's May, and then they're growing on into like June and somewhat into July. By July, it is getting so hot outside that it's really hard to keep stuff going and keep stuff at their best by the kind of end of summer. Well, I say end, that's like the middle of our summer, but the end of like the calendar year summer. So if you're starting more warm season flowers in May, by the time you're getting them out to grow, they may do okay, but they're probably going to struggle more than the earlier rounds. So I just say like February, March, April, 2 or 3 rounds of all these flowers, and then I'm done. May, you can also plant mum cuttings. And then by the end of May, that's when I'm stopping my weekly or biweekly successions of sunflowers. Because if you think about, if I plant sunflower seeds at the end of May, the earliest I have gotten sunflowers in the heat of summer has been about 45 days. So then those will be blooming maybe end of June, beginning of July. And that's kind of when I'm starting to shut stuff down for a bit of a break. So that's going to really be, my last successions. I don't want to be planting sunflowers over the summer. I want to let all of these initial ones kind of grow, bloom, and be done. And then I have my little break and then I start more. So speaking of a break, I really am not planting or starting any kind of seeds in June and July. Not only is it summer and it's hot and, we're doing our best just to keep everything watered and keep things alive, but it's also summer like in the calendar year and with my kids being out of school, and we like to go on vacations and do fun things in the summer. It's also hard for me to come to the farm and work a lot during the summer because my kids are out of school. And so they may be in or out of camps doing activities, and I don't have like the full school day to be out here. So, June, I'm having things grow. I'm still selling and making bouquets, but I'm not planting anything new. I'm not starting new seeds. Same with July. and really into like the beginning of August, I don't want to be messing with any of that. And by the end of July, beginning of August, I've pretty much shut stuff down. And that's, sorry, my cat decided to come up here in the video. You want to say hi, Oreo? This is Oreo. He's our farm cat. So yeah, by the end of the summer, end of July, beginning of August, I think that's a really good time to take a break because it is so ungodly hot. We usually haven't had a lot of rain. It's going to be a struggle to keep a lot of stuff alive at that point, to be and also to be at like the best quality that you want to be selling it at. And we usually go to the beach right before school starts, and then my kids start school kind of beginning middle of August. And I just don't want to be worried about a lot of like the farming stuff at that time. I want to enjoy that time with my kids and my family. So, you know, June, July, definitely a break. Beginning of August, definitely a break. Now, after the kids go back to school, we're now kind of into the middle, end of August. I will start some more sunflowers for the fall. Depending on the temperatures, I may be able to plant them outside. I might have to start them inside and then move them. And I have found this out. I didn't realize it until I tried to grow sunflowers here in this heat year before last. When the temperature outside is over 100 for a good chunk of time and the soil gets that hot, sunflower seeds will not germinate. And so you have to start them inside, get them to germinate, and then transplant them. I don't like doing that, but that is an option if the heat is too intense outside. Now, last summer, or this past summer, we actually didn't have over 100 degrees that often. I was kind of shocked. I think a lot of the heat was in the Midwest. The previous summer, the first summer we had our farm, it was freaking 100 plus degrees for almost 3 months with no rain. So that was like the worst summer we have seen in a long time. This past summer, it was actually kind of nice. Like we had some rain here and there, and a lot of the day temperatures were in the 90s. So it could definitely still direct sow sunflowers outside. So just depending on the temperature in August, because it's definitely going to be hot. It's just a matter of how hot. That's going to determine how you want to plant your sunflowers. I will also start some warm season annuals inside for my fall flowers, kind of like, I would say middle to end of August. And then moving on into September. September is always hot as well. We're now transplanting those warm season annuals outside. And I just do one round of these for the fall, because by the time I get them out and they start growing, you know, then I'm selling them, making bouquets, doing our U-pick. That's going to take me probably through Thanksgiving. And by that point, I'm usually kind of wanting to shut it down. So while I do 3 rounds of warm season annuals in the spring and summer, I'm only doing 1 for the fall. Just keep it kind of shorter and simple. Now, September is also when you want to start putting your tulip bulbs in the refrigerator or cooler. If you are buying just bulbs yourself, either locally or from a wholesaler, and they're not going to be pre-chilled by whoever you're buying them from, you've got to get them in the cold. And this is going to be about 40 degrees Fahrenheit, 5 degrees Celsius. So your refrigerator's fine as long as they're not near any kind of like fruit. Or, you know, if you have a cooler, just stick them in there, check them periodically, make sure they're not molding. It's not, you know, too dry, too humid. But where I live in South Texas, you really need a good like 12 weeks of cooling. Some people will say you can get away with 8 or 10. I've tried shorter. It has not gone as well as longer. And really what you're doing with these tulip bulbs is you're tricking them into thinking that they're in this, you know, fabulous cold environment where they like to grow. I mean, they traditionally have always grown in the Netherlands. That's where we get our bulbs from, and it stays cold there throughout the winter. Here, it does not grow. It does not get cold enough to just plant tulips in the ground and expect them to grow, especially, you know, for cut flowers to have these long, tall stems, big blooms. You know, maybe you can put some out like your landscaping bed, but even that's going to be hit or miss. pre-chill your tulips. So get them in the refrigerator, the cooler in September, maybe even to the beginning of October. Okay, so October is another very busy month. Now, by the end of October, I'm not planting any more sunflowers. It's still going to be pretty warm / hot, but thinking about, how quickly sunflowers bloom, and with it starting to cool down toward the end of the year, sunflowers are going to take longer to grow and to bloom. By the end of October, that's when I'm stopping my weekly sunflower plantings. This is when the biggest thing that I'm going to do this month is start the first round of cool season flowers. So that's going to be things like bells of Ireland, cress, mignonette, strawflower, snapdragon, statice, stock, and yarrow. Those are all flowers that I start by seed here at my farm. So I start them inside and then I transplant them out later. I also order a fair amount of plugs for cool season flowers. Some of them are hard to start, especially here, because they like the cold, and it can be very hit or miss if we have the right cold temperatures for some of these. So, I've tried growing them inside. I've tried direct seeding them, and I've had marginal success with these ones that I order by plug. So I have found, look, it's just easier to leave this to the professionals, order the plugs, and let them do the hard work for me and then get them shipped in. So I order plugs for bells of Ireland. Now I will start some by seed, but I would say on average about a 50% germination rate, whether I start them inside or direct seed them. So I will do some, and then I order more plugs. I definitely order plugs for Bupleurum. I have had a really hard time either direct seeding or starting that indoors. I definitely also order plugs for if I want to grow any Ami, dill, lace flowers, anything from that, carrot family, feverfew, and yarrow. And then just any other, plugs I want to order if I feel like I'm not going to have enough time to start all the seeds I want to start. You can order plugs for everything if you want. If you don't like starting seeds, you don't have the time, the space to do that, then just order plugs. That's perfectly fine. I like to kind of do a mix. I like starting seeds. I have the room for it. I just found this past year it's kind of a matter of time, especially with being like a mom and having all these other things going on. I can't be out here all day, every day. So I did have a few points where I ran out of time to start the flowers that I wanted to start. And so I ended up buying more plugs. And I think that's what I'm going to do moving forward, is be more realistic on, well, what can I actually start myself versus just order in. Okay, now moving on to November. So we're almost getting to the end of the year. I will start a second round of cool season annuals. And for the cool seasons, I just do either 1 or 2 successions. I don't do the 3 that the warm season does, just because we have a smaller window. Remember, mild winter, very short spring, it heats up usually pretty quickly. So, by November, I need to be starting my last cool season flowers and getting them outside. Any later, they're probably not going to have enough time to really grow, in the cool season that they enjoy and then bloom well before it starts getting too hot. So first succession in October, second in November. This is also the perfect time to plant wildflowers. I used to say October, but the last few Octobers have been pretty hot, and wildflowers like the cold. We have a big wildflower field here, so I usually make sure it's mowed down. I try to pick a day that maybe it's going to rain that day, the next day, just to kind of like soak them in. And then I'll just go out and I throw all the wildflowers down, and then I leave them alone until the spring. November, especially later in November toward Thanksgiving, that's when you want to also get any other cool season like bulbs or corms in the ground. I have found waiting a little bit later till it's getting nice and cool outside. And I say cool, I say below, you're getting some days where it's below 70 degrees. That's going to be a better time to plant your anemones. I grow ranunculus and daffodils and get those out planted. I've done it in October before, but now once again, with it being hotter, longer in the year, I just find October is usually still too hot. And I like to wait till the end of November or even beginning of December to get those in the ground. All right, we made it to the end of the year. So the last month is December. This is when I like to go direct sow poppies. That's really the only thing that I have really good luck with direct sowing outdoors. I will plant those in December or even into January. This is a great time to start planting any of those perennials or roses that I said, at the beginning of the year, you could get them in over the winter. And then December, I have found, is really the perfect time to plant your tulips. So if you were cooling them yourselves in your refrigerator or cooler, you did that back in September. So now it should be a good 12 weeks or so. Pull them out and get them planted in December. And you should be getting flowers by Valentine's. So that is a key thing, something that I really jumped on this year. I'm growing a lot more tulips this year, and I got them all planted hopefully in time for Valentine's. So that's fingers crossed. Last year, they started blooming the week after Valentine's because some of them were a little bit later, but you can start getting your tulips out in December. And then, like I said, up to the beginning of January. So that is it. That is my whole year of what I grow and when I grow everything. I know there's going to be some stuff that I didn't mention. Probably a big one you might be asking about is dahlias. I do not grow dahlias. I have tried. I think they're gorgeous. It is way too hot here. They do not like it. They do not do well. I have known a few people similar to my zone that have grown dahlias, and they usually, you get them planted out as early as possible. So usually like beginning of February, maybe the latest by March, because you want them blooming in late spring before our heat sets in. But I have just found they're too difficult, and it's just not worth my time to grow dahlias. But if there's another flower that I didn't mention that you're curious about, comment below. And if I've grown it, I'll give you my take on it. If I haven't, I'll try to look up and recommend, when to grow it. I will say, there's so many different flowers you can grow. This is just what I have grown, what I have found works, and works for my farm, works for my climate, works for my modes of selling. And of course, that's all going to be different for everybody. Last little thing, if you want to see a tour of the farm here, I will link that video down below. I filmed that right before New Year's, and it just shows kind of the farm property, what I grow, where I grow everything, what all is going on right now, and kind of plans for the next several months. But I hope this was helpful. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you have any questions at all, comment down below. If you have any recommendations for any videos you want to see me cover coming up, comment those down below, and I will see you guys in my next video.